So I'm Tira with Rent Mason Bees, and today we are partnering with City Fruit, and we have Emily and Riley. I almost want to say Riley, and this is Evan Watts, the owner of the brewery, and Jim Watts, the owner of Rent Mason Bees and Watts Solitary Bees. So I'm going to hand it over to Evan really quick to introduce you to this amazing brewery and the history of why you're all here and why they're all named after bees.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. So it's called Watts Brewing, named after our family, specifically my dad and grandpa, who started the bee business, raising leafcutter bees and mason bees. Grandpa got started on this almost 60 years ago, and now my dad runs it. So when I started the brewery, we needed a theme for it, wanted to incorporate the bees and that bit of family history. So I don't know if you noticed on the way in, okay, sorry. I don't know if you noticed on the way in the bee boards on the walls there. Those are the actual boards that we use for raising leafcutter bees. And then out here in our beer garden as well, we've got the sides on the tent for the moment, but in the spring we'll take the sides off. We got flowers out there. We'll have the mason bees flying around. So everything we do here is kind of bees and pollination themed. If you notice, our beer name's named after the leafcutter beer named after the leafcutter bee. We've got the red mason rye named after the mason bee. So it's baked into everything we do here. So I really appreciate you guys coming out, and I hope you learned some things about bees while you're here.
And some other things is this space is available to rent, so you're always welcome to come here and do your own events. And they have lots of really fun live music and lots of really cool things. So we're excited to be here, and it's part of the bee family that now you're all a part of. So I'm really excited about this partnership with City Fruit this year. It's a brand new partnership for us, but we align so well with the bee hosts and the fruit trees that need to have our bees to be pollinated. So I wanted them to talk a little bit about their program. It's a really great program. If you want to join and become a member, you get all sorts of great advice on how to raise your fruit trees and how to harvest and prune them. There's all sorts of services. They will speak to that. But it's a great partnership, and I'm really excited that they are here today as well. So go ahead, Emily.
Thank you so much for being here today to learn about City Fruit, to learn about Rent Mason Bees. Like Tira, I'm very excited for this partnership. My name is Emily Tomita, and I'm the Executive Director of City Fruit. And I'm really briefly going to tell you about City Fruit. So our mission is to steward and harvest urban fruit trees to support sustainable and equitable access to fruit within the Seattle community. And we are a very small nonprofit. We got our start in Seattle in 2008, and we have grown a little bit outside of the Seattle area, and we would love to grow more in the future. But right now, we're really focusing in on trees and fruit redistribution within the Seattle area. So as I mentioned, we were founded in 2008, and we were founded mainly to solve two problems. First problem, and you all maybe are aware of this, there are a lot of fruit trees in our region. And a lot of those fruit trees go unharvested. The fruit drops to the ground, it rots, it encourages pests. We don't want that to happen, right? Second problem, we also have a lot of food insecurity in our region. 1 in 10 people in King County specifically is food insecure. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. So our founder, Gail Savina, was like, why don't we feed two birds with one scone? Let's solve these two problems together, right? So Gail Savina put together City Fruit to harvest local fruit trees and redistribute that fruit to food banks, community-based organizations that will get that fruit into the hands of people who need it most. So our team here today, again, I'm Emily. We've got Riley here, who's our program manager, and we have Hallie back there at the table. Hopefully you'll go and say hi to Hallie later. And I'm going to pass it off to Riley to tell us about the harvest program.
Perfect. Hello, all. Thanks for being here. As Emily mentioned, I'm Riley Wilmart, City Fruit's program manager. So our main program area of City Fruit is our harvest program, where we harvest anywhere between 30 to 40,000 pounds of fruit every summer between June, sometimes through October, maybe November, if those kiwis are coming in. And my job is to connect all of that food to the local meal programs and partners that we donate to. So that is our way of having folks who are experiencing food insecurity have little to no access or little to no barriers accessing that fresh fruit. And any fruit that is not of quality to be donated or eaten fresh, like if there's fruit or apples, codling moth is a big pest problem for apples in this region. That is not, okay to be donating to food banks for people to eat eat fresh. So we have partnerships with local cideries and bakeries that will take that and process it into other edible goods. So Seattle Cider is like one of our big partnerships, if y'all are familiar with them. And so we have a small team of college interns and seasonal harvesters who make up our team during the summer months to harvest all of this fruit, and all of those people are usually under the age of 25, so a very young group of people harvesting all of this fruit. Perfect. And so, this is a visual display of where all that fruit is going, but I didn't mention the Fruit for All farm stands. So that is like our lowest barrier, no cost at all way of getting fruit that we harvest. So we about every week or so we'll host a farm stand at one of our like community centers, just one of our partners, and we'll have that fruit be available for free for anyone to come and grab, no questions asked, just whatever you need. You can come and grab that from us. And so this is a visual representation of all of the public orchards that we steward around Seattle. And there's even a couple, if you notice, on the east side in Kirkland and Bellevue. But these are a great way for us to get like local folks in the community who haven't gotten to interact with their local fruit canopy to be able to come to these public orchards and learn how to steward fruit trees, whether they have any pruning or pest prevention experience. They can come and learn that. And it's also a great way for the stewards of these orchards to get extra help, because usually it's a very small team, sometimes one person helping to steward these public orchards. So that's where they come and ask City Fruit to come help, and then we'll usually garner volunteers to come and help steward those orchards to keep them healthy and happy for the rest, hopefully for a long time.
So one of the services City Fruit offers, in addition to stewarding public orchards and harvesting fruit from private tree owners, is we also offer tree care services. So if any of you all have fruit trees, you know that they take some work, right? They need to be pruned, you need to mulch them, there's a lot that needs to be done. So we have trained tree fruit experts on our team who will go out and provide tree care services to clients. And sometimes those are the same clients that then end up donating their fruit back to City Fruit. So it's a beautiful cycle. So mulching, tree planting, netting. Again, our service area is currently the greater Seattle area, but hopefully one day we will grow. So really quickly, before I hand the mic back off to Tira, I want to tell you a little bit about City Fruit membership. So like I mentioned, City Fruit is a very small organization, and one of the big areas of support that we get are from community members who sign up to be City Fruit members. And what that means is you make a monthly donation to City Fruit, minimum $10 a month, but you're also welcome to give more than $10 a month. And as a thank you for that support, for supporting our organization, you get perks at many local businesses. So, for example, anyone here shop at PCC, have a PCC close to you? So every month as a City Fruit member, you get a $10 off coupon to shop at PCC, which, if you're doing the math, $10 a month to be a member, you save $10 at PCC. Our newest partner is Rent Mason Bees, and we're so excited about this because it seemed like such a natural partnership, right? That so many folks who are affiliated with City Fruit have their own fruit trees, and being able to host solitary bees like mason bees or leafcutter bees can really help boost your fruit yield, and we're going to learn all about that today. So all City Fruit members also get 10% off their Rent Mason Bee purchases. Yeah, we're partnered with a bunch of other cideries in the area. Hallie has all of the details associated with membership perks. So please feel free to go visit Hallie over there.
All right, so I'm excited, as always, because I love teaching you guys about bees. So we're going to start up. So here in the Pacific Northwest, you all have the blue orchard mason bee. That's our native mason bee and our native pollinator to this area. A lot of people don't know what they look like, and they get confused between a housefly and a mason bee. And when I teach the kids at school, my daughter kind of coined it when she was younger. She called them mermaid bees because they have that green iridescent sheen on their body. And the kids, when they're going out in the gardens, the teacher's like, let's go find the mermaid bee. So it's kind of a fun way if you have grandkids, you just kind of tie them into these little bees. Flies have the red eyes. Mason bees they don't have the red eyes, they have the black eyes. And I'll show you some video. They have like 3 eyes on top and then 2 eyes on the side. They're amazing little bees. So I wanted to show you a slide of the difference between a housefly and a mason bee. I know at my house, we have 5,000 bees that we have all over my property. And I came outside one day and I heard a buzzing noise. And I was like, what's that? And I looked down and it was a mason bee stuck in a spider's web. So of course I had to go save it and rescue it. So you know, you'll start identifying the ones that you want the spiders to get and the ones you don't want the spiders to get. So just a little, that's what they look like. So what is a solitary bee? So a lot of people know what honeybees are, but solitary bees, there's 90% of our bees are solitary. And that means that each female lays all her own eggs, finds her own food, and finds her own nesting chambers. Solitary, alone. She does it all by herself. So when you see all these little bees trying to find their holes, they're not going to compete with each other. One will fly in and like, oh, that one's already used. Okay, I'm going to go to the next hole. Oh, there's my hole, right? And they'll lay between 5 to sometimes 15, or 5 to 15 babies in each hole, and we'll show you a little bit about that. So the distinctions and the difference between a blue orchard mason bee and a honeybee. The blue orchard mason bee are native to our North America, and the honeybees, they originate from Europe. We love honeybees, but they originate from Europe. Mason bees don't produce honey, don't have a hive, don't have a queen. So they're very, very sweet little bees. They're not aggressive. You can see in some of the videos, or even at your own home, you can literally go right up to the little bee block and watch them work. And people were helping me release bees today, like you can touch them. So let me answer a question I get asked all the time. Do they sting? So mason bees, I call them a poker, because so many kids and so many people are afraid of the word bees. They hear the word bee and they freak out, I'm gonna get stung. Mason bees, solitary bees, leafcutters, I like to call them pokers. Like a rose bush has thorns, a mason bee has a poker. Boys don't even have a poker. The girls have a poker, but they don't use it to go and attack or hurt you. The only time I've been poked is when I was in the almond orchards in California, and I do all the pictures and video. I was posing a bee. I wanted to get a picture of a bee on one of the flowers of the almond blooms. So I take the tube and I dump it out, and I've got a whole bunch of bees in my hand, and I got zapped. So kind of when you shuffle your feet and you touch something and you get shocked, that's what it feels like. It's a zap. So I got zapped for the first time. They don't have anaphylactic shock. They don't hurt. It was like nothing. There was nothing even wrong with my hands. So it's good to know when you're learning about these. The boys, no pokers. The girls have a poker, but you won't get poked unless you try to pose them on a picture. So your choice. So the solitary mason bees, they will lay about 15 to 20 babies in their lifetime. And those honeybee queens are busy. They do 2,000 a day. And the big distinction is how they pollinate. So the mason bees belly flop onto the flowers, and they collect pollen all over their body. They have little hairs called scopa, S-C-O-P-A, scopa. And they belly flop, and it's loose pollen all over their body. So when they fly to those flowers, that's sprinkled, and they pollinate everything in your yard. So I love to show this slide because you can see them completely covered in yellow pollen. And I want you to look in your yard this year when you're looking at your bees. See the ones that are covered in pollen. You can tell that those are the solitary bees. They have that hair that collects the pollen. So they pollinate 95% of everything they touch. Honeybees have to collect it on their hind legs. They only pollinate 5%. And mason bees can reach up to 2,000 blooms a day. Fruit tree owners, these are the bees that you want to pollinate your fruit trees. They are the blue orchard mason bee. They're notorious for amazing fruit pollination for your fruit trees. We're going to teach you how to really utilize them this year. So we get asked all the time, oh, they're ruining my barn, they're chewing wood, they're chewing holes in my wood in my house. I'm like, no, those are the carpenter bees. Mason bee mandibles are not strong enough to chew wood. They might go use that carpenter hole or a woodpecker hole or a reed or they'll find natural holes in your habitat to lay their babies. They cannot make their own holes. So if your friends are upset about the bees making holes, that's not your mason bees. Those are the carpenter bees. All right, so mason bees emerge soon, you guys. We're getting there. I can feel it. My flowers are starting to bloom. I saw a couple mason bees yesterday flying around in my yard. We're getting close. And so they will emerge when our temperatures reach about 55 degrees. So then you get some baby bees. So who wants to hold a baby bee? All right, raise your hand. We're going to have Nina and Michelle walk around. If you want to hold a baby bee, it's just a cocoon. right? There's not flying bees. As you know our program, you're going to get those cocoons. If you want to hold a baby bee, just raise your hand. We're going to have you hold a baby bee. What I say to the kids when I'm speaking to schools, I tell them to sit crisscross applesauce and be really quiet, because you don't want to wake up the sleeping bees. So you're really quiet, and I get the kids to be really nice and quiet. You can hear cracking. You're not going to be able to hear it with all the noise in here, but you can hear cracking, kind of like a Rice Krispie. Okay? When you go out into your yard in the spring and you hear that crunching noise coming from your house, those are your bees chewing through the cocoon to start to emerge. So you can get engaged early on. If you have grandkids or kids at home, or you want to hold baby bees with the neighborhood, this is a great way to have them hold their baby bees. You're going to do it outside. Don't bring your bees inside. You know our program. Don't bring those bees inside. You don't want them emerging. But I wanted to show you what it sounds like, because it's like Rice Krispies. You can literally hear them crunching in your bee house. Okay, so here's the video. If you've seen it, you just enjoy it again. But this is what they look like when they emerge. The males are going to emerge first. And this is a key component for note takers or anything you want to know. The boys emerge first. The girls will come out 1 to 2 weeks later. We're going to talk a little bit about this when we get to the fruit tree pollination section. But when the boys come out first and you've got the girls a couple weeks later, that's about 2-3 week period of time. So if you're wanting those fruit trees pollinated, you're going to want to put that tube out when they start budding. And we'll talk about that because the girls will come out later. Okay? You might start hearing cracking if you're holding cocoons. You might, if you hold sometimes when I teach the kids, they can hear the cracking. They won't emerge right away. If they do, I have a terrarium, but you can hear them while you're holding them because your hands are warm. So when the boys emerge, they're going to mark your tube with scent, a scent mark. That's not mud. That's the boys marking it with scent. That's a good sign. So when you see that scent mark on the tube, that's the boys emerging, and they mark it with scent. When you buy our nesting blocks, we also mark your nesting blocks with scent mark. So you don't have to go buy any of the bells and whistles. We put drops of scent mark in our nesting blocks as well. Sometimes, as many of you know, they might not come back to your nesting block. That's okay. The success of the program is releasing those bees, providing a habitat for them to thrive. That just means they found natural holes in your habitat to go and lay their babies. When they come back, a lot of times it doesn't look like the holes, there's nothing happened. Oh, I'm a failure. I didn't do a good job. I'm like, no, you're fine. And I was teaching a little trick where you can, when you take your block out, you can pull back that foam and you can see if there's mud in the back, and that's an indicator that there are bees. It's just all the way in the back and they didn't come all the way forward. So the females will go out into your yard. They will grab the mud, which is a reminder to please not use pesticides or slug bait or any of that in your yard, because these little bees, don't use slug bait. Please don't use slug bait. Or weed killer on any of your dandelions or anything in your yard.
I'll have it.
That's okay. Don't use slug bait. I have tips on our website for safeguarding tips for removing slugs or other things that you don't want that are safe for bees, because those pesticides are going to seep into the ground. And then the mama's going to grab that mud. It's going to make her sick, but she puts it right next to her babies, and it will make them sick as well. When we get blocks back and we see larvae or babies that little larvae that haven't formed, it's usually because they've been contaminated by pesticides. So she's going to go into that hole with that mud. She's going to go all the way into the back. She's going to cap it with mud, and then she's going to go out and get pollen, and she'll put a pollen loaf, and then she'll lay a teeny tiny little egg, and then she'll cap it with mud. So you have mud, pollen, baby, mud. See how much mud's used? Okay, so be careful what you're putting in your yard. So I did a video online. It's a 3-part series of what are your baby bees doing. Any of the videos I'm showing today are all on our YouTube channel. You can go reference them at any time. But I did turn the audio off on this because I get all high-pitched, oh, look at the bees. So I was like, I'll do that in person for you guys today. So you can see how some of the holes don't look like there's anything in them at the front. See that? Some of them are empty. But when I open the nesting block, inside, you can see all the rows of bees. See how way in the back there's nesting chambers back there, but you couldn't even see it at the front, right? So when people are discouraged that their bees didn't come back, you'd be surprised that they do. And other things get in there too, right? So you can see in this video how many bees are in one cell. That's where I went all high-pitched when I did this video. Oh my gosh, there's 15 bees and all that. There's a lot of bees in that cell. But you can see the mud, the pollen, the teeny tiny little babies, and the mud. That's what the inside of your nesting chamber looks like. It's fascinating how these little bees work. So then you go in with the life cycle of a mason bee. This took me 2 years to film. And I used my macro lens. And I got some really fun footage. I got new stuff, but this is the most recent version. I call this, you'll learn a lot from this video. When the bees go into the hole to lay their babies and make their nesting chambers, do they go back out, and how many times are they going back in and out? So they will use that hole until it's all the way filled to the end. When I opened up that nesting block video and you saw that row of bees, they're going to lay the mud, the pollen, the baby, and there'll be anywhere from 5 to, I think that video had 14 in one cell. And at the end, they cap it with mud to protect the babies inside. She asked, is it 1 bee per 1 hole? Yes, it is. 1 bee will go and fill that hole with her babies. So the female mason bees are only going to live 6 to 8 weeks. So we're going to talk about this with your fruit tree pollination, how to get the most pollination for your entire spring into the start of June-ish, July-ish. So they only live 6 to 8 weeks. And then after spring, you're going to remove that nesting block. You're not going to leave it out year-round. That's a big key thing. There's 3 things that I'll talk about. I'll reiterate it again. Clean nested material out at the beginning of spring. At the end of spring, you're removing your nesting block and you're storing it safely in a garage or a shed. And then the 3rd thing is you're harvesting and cleaning in the fall. Those are your 3 key things when you're raising mason bees. So I do have a bunch of QR codes throughout the videos. If you want to take pictures of the QR codes, they go directly to the videos that I'm talking about. But if you have a mason bee block or any type of nesting material and you're removing it at the end of spring, all right, so you're simply going to take tulle. This, luckily, I think this was an Amazon thing, but it works for the bees. But I just went to any fabric store and you just pick up a little thing of tulle, like $1. It doesn't cost a lot. And you put your mason bee block inside, and then I use a hairband. You can just tie it up, and it'll keep out any critters. You don't have to do this, but some people like to do that just to kind of protect them over the summer. You're just going to take this out and store it back in your cool garage or shed, right? They don't need to be temperature controlled at that point. So that's a trick for the spring. At the end of spring, beginning of summer, you don't want to leave them out year round. You want to take that block down and get them out of the summer elements, the mono wasp, all the predators that can get to them, grass wasp, all of that. When I'm teaching you guys today about the predators, I'm not saying this from me just freaking you out and scaring you. We're the largest solitary bee provider in the country. We work with research teams all across USDA Bee Lab in Utah. We've got Penn State, we've got UC Riverside, UC Davis. We are working with hundreds of researchers who are studying the pollen mites, the predators, the chalkbrood. We have Abigail, who's local, who is out there working with a lot of our bee hosts. Some of you are using her. She puts her stuff out there to go check what they're eating and the soils, like all of that. So when I'm teaching you about predators, it's coming from research and data that more and more people that are buying millions of bee homes and bee hotels a year are putting them out with good intentions, but are not cleaning. They're not taking care of those bee blocks, which then you're going to be releasing more predators than mason bees. And then over time, that mason bee hotel will become completely infected with predators. Okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about predators. You saw the video, but when I'm teaching you about predators, I'm having video from all these guys, so it's really important. Pollen mites. Hard to avoid. They are on the flowers in your yard. The bees go out and collect the pollen. The pollen mites collect on their back, and then they go into the nesting chamber. The hard thing with pollen mites is they're really hard to see. When we do classes and stuff in September, when we do bee block parties and you return your blocks, I'll open up nesting blocks and we'll show you. When I go into classrooms for the kids, I'll take a little thing of pollen mites and I'll put them in a petri dish and we'll stick them under a microphone so that the kids can go and examine and watch the pollen mites. But they literally, you put them there, they will spread out in the petri dish. They move and they crawl. And so what happens when you're not cleaning and you think you can leave them out year round because Mother Nature's going to take care of them, I get that pushback all the time when I'm teaching or I'm talking. Well, in Mother Nature, they don't have to clean. Why do we have to clean? I'm just going to let nature take its course. I've heard that from several people. Like, if you're setting out a bee hotel, you're now responsible for caring for those bees. Just like honeybee hives have to have that maintenance and care, your solitary bees need that maintenance and care too. You're setting out a hotel for, a lot of these are kleptoparasites that'll come in and use those nesting chambers. In the wild, they're camouflaging in the reeds or the other parts of your yard. That's not like a flag going, yeah, woo-hoo, here I am, come find me, right? So in nature, they're camouflaged. I had somebody say, well, we don't have to worry about the bamboo or the reeds in my yard. They're not going to use them again. They're not going to come back and use those reeds or those things in your yard again because they know instinctually that that's bad, it's moldy, it has stuff in it, right? But when you're providing nesting chambers and nesting material, you have to clean and you have to put out clean stuff right now in spring. I'm going to teach you tricks on how to help with this. So when they emerge from that nesting cell, I need a poker, they're going to crawl. So see this cocoon here? It's got to crawl out to get out of the nesting chamber. It has to crawl through the pollen mites in order to get out of your nesting chamber. When it crawls through the pollen mites, that's how the pollen mites cling to their back and then they spread. So in our cleaning and our harvesting, we clean everything. We use a mild bleach solution. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And we use fire and flame to kill them. So if you're cleaning your own, which I have step-by-step videos on how to do it yourself, if you choose to do it yourself, or that's where the rental program, you send those nesting blocks back to us and we take care of all the critters for you. So this is a video from UC Riverside of pollen mites. So I have some old nesting material in here where I'm releasing bees. I'm going to teach you how to do that. And they're crawling out of this bamboo and the log with holes, and they're covered in mites. So it's sad, but it is a way of, we'll release them out here, of course, but I didn't want to release them in my garden at home because they were started to emerge yesterday, but I'm like, I'm not taking it, you're not going in my garden because you're covered in pollen mites. But that's what pollen mites look like. Chalkbrood is a fungus. It's a spore that's found on the flowers. Can't help it, but that little mama mason bee, she'll go out and she'll collect pollen for her baby. She'll carry it back into her nesting chamber. She'll lay that pollen loaf for her baby, seal it up, lay her baby. Mama doesn't know it. Baby doesn't know it. Baby starts eating that pollen, ingests that spore, and then that spore will dry it from the inside out, and then that chalkbrood stuff bursts inside your nesting chamber. And all these little spores are microscopic, and you can't clean them with water. You have to burn them with flame or just throw away the nesting material and put out new nesting material. So pollen mites and chalkbrood are really hard to get rid of. You have to. I had a guy the other day say he uses, I spoke at the Sunset Club on Wednesday, he put his cocoons in a jar with sand and he shook it and that's how he cleaned it. He goes, does that work? I'm like, no, you're not killing the pollen mites or the chalkbrood. So our research teams that are studying the pollen mites, they even put them in the freezer and it doesn't do anything. Like they're so hardy. So you really, when we burn them over flame, you can hear them popping. So the pollen mites, you can hear popping, yeah. So Houdini fly, unfortunately, you guys, is on the rise in our area. It is a kleptoparasite. And what that means is it utilizes the mason bee nesting chamber to lay its babies. It waits for mama mason bee to leave, and then it goes into that hole, and it lays anywhere from 5, sometimes we've counted 15 to 30 of her eggs in that nesting chamber. Mama mason doesn't know. She'll go in, she'll cap it with mud. Now there's mud, pollen, baby mason bee, 15 Houdini fly, and mud in one cell. Now these are really easy to spot when you open up your nesting chambers. You can even do it now, you guys. If you have nesting chambers right now that you have not cleaned and we're about ready, you are able to open them or crack open the bamboo. I have videos on how to do that on How to Harvest video. You can pull those cocoons out that are viable, get them away from the pollen mites, get them away from the Houdini fly, and then dispose of the predators. Get rid of the predators, provide clean nesting material for those bees to then go out and lay, okay? So again, you can see I have videos on to help you identify what's inside your nesting block. This curly stuff, it's like brown curly stuff, that is frass. That is the Houdini fly poop. That's what that brown curly stuff is. So you can see this black little stuff, that's mason bee frass before it was compromised. Oh, and they're little tiny. They look like fruit flies. They're teeny, teeny, tiny little flies. So if you see them in your garden, I also have a video on how to squish them. You can wear a glove if you want, but just, they don't sting, they don't hurt, but they do hurt your bees. Mono wasp is a summer predator. So a mono wasp is also a kleptoparasite. Again, you're not leaving your nesting blocks out year-round. You're removing them at the end of spring before summer. We deal with the mono wasp around here all the time, and grass wasps and lots of other predators. Birds can even get to it. So at the end of spring, beginning of summer, take out your nesting block because you're going to help them from the mono wasp. Mono wasp, that is not a stinger. That is an ovipositor. She also waits at the end in the summertime when the mason bees are all done flying. She gets into those nesting chambers and she pokes the ovipositor inside into the cocoon, lays her babies in the cocoon, which of course kills the baby mason bee. We got some tubes back last year during our September bee block party, when everyone's bringing their blocks back, and this woman brought back this box full of cardboard tubes. And all you could see were holes poked all through the cardboard tubes. You can see them with your eye if you had cardboard tubes. You can see them with your eye when you're candling your cocoons. You can see the holes in them. You want to get rid of them. So we snipped open a couple of, we got a little video. I didn't get my camera in time, but you guys, it was like out of a horror movie. All these mono wasps just started pouring out of this tiny little cocoon. And I'm like, quick, Nina, grab the camera. She got a tiny little video, but it wasn't enough. I needed my macro lens. I wasn't ready to show you guys what I discovered. So, that's when I do my videos. It's because I learned something new. I'm like, quick, we got to teach you. So that's what a mono wasp is. Very important to make sure you're also squishing them and if you see them, but they shouldn't be out when in the summertime. So this is what they look like. That's just an ovipositor. cleaning, your nesting chambers will eventually become predator habitats. I think we were talking about you want to see what's going on inside. This is a nesting block we got back, right? We clean, we take care of everything, but in the garden there must have been, this whole block was full of pollen mites. Well, thank goodness we brought it back to clean, because now we just got rid of millions of those little pollen mites. This is Houdini fly frass, right? So when you don't clean, I really like to show this, because it's like, wow, there's a lot that goes on inside there. And that's how they survive, right? I mean, we're nature, we deal with that, but that's how all these predators survive too. So the key thing is to never, ever use bamboo or logs with holes drilled in it. It's a huge platform and mission that I'm doing right now, because how many years have we been doing mason bees, even the Boy Scouts troop, all of these, everyone does drilled logs. You can never clean them, and bamboo gets moldy, and you can't clean the bamboo. I do a video where I try to crack open the bamboo. We do Dungeness crab at the beach. You kind of do it like that, but it's hard to crack some of that thicker bamboo. So it's really important to use the right nesting material. So this is not good nesting material. So mason bee nesting material needs to be 8 millimeters in diameter for a hole and 6 inches of nesting tube. These are short and super glued. Oh, they're not super glued. Well, there's nothing in the back. Mason bees need to have the cover. That's why we put the black foam, and you'll see some people cap it. So this is not the right nesting material. You don't want to put that out. No, you don't, because that's not a healthy habitat for them. The holes aren't the right size, they're not the right depth, and it won't protect them. It looks cute, right? I brought a demo on how to do this. So if you have a house like that, if you have something in your yard that you haven't harvested and you're ready to transition from the old nesting material to the healthy nesting material, I have a video on it. So you're going to want to use stacking trays or cardboard tubes. You can scan this QR code to show you the video, but I can do it live for you. I have a lot of bees emerging right now. But the trick is, and you can come up here and look later, but hi, buddy. You are going to want to put all this old nesting material in a bin, not in the sunshine. Please don't bake them. You don't want to cook them. I know. And we'll get you outside. So you're going to put this box in your yard or out in a shaded area, and you're just going to, as they emerge, you're going to open the lid and let them fly off. And then you're going to put the lid back on. This is the easy way. I did a video a couple years ago where you can pour like sawdust. Oh, you're giving piggyback rides. Okay, we'll leave you two alone. So, you'll put your bad nesting material in here, open the lid, let them fly. They're going to want to go back in. You don't want them going back in this nesting material. You're going to set somewhere between 5 to 10 feet away from this clean nesting material for them to transfer into a new home. Okay. Now they like to come back to where the scent marks are. You're going to confuse them because you're not letting them back to where their scent marks are, but that's okay because you're providing healthy nesting material, right? So it might take them some time to establish and find the home, but this is a trick to transition. And there's a video I did, but I just did it for you live, so you can do that. And then if you're cleaning your own bees, you're going to want to harvest and clean. This is another video that you can scan to watch how to harvest and clean your own bees. Now, you can do this right now in spring. We're ready for bee season, but if you do have nesting material you can open, you can rescue the bees inside by just opening. You can't wash them. You're done with that stage, but just open everything up, pluck the cocoons out that are viable, and then you probably don't have a tube, but you can use like a Jello box or some sort of a little emergence box, poke a hole in it, put the loose cocoons in there, and then they'll emerge. You can't put loose cocoons because the birds will eat them. So you have to protect them in a little box or something. So you could potentially go in right now and save your baby bees, or you can do this method. This is how we harvest and clean. And I'm not going to show you the video today because it's a long presentation, but you can scan that QR code. This is how we harvest and clean 3 million. And we're local. We love volunteers coming. We always do the fall harvest in October, and it's mind-blowing to see in person. It's really staggering. We do it at Jim's house in the back. It's all outside because you can't go inside because it's warm up the bees. And that sorting picture, we hand sort 3 million mason bee cocoons on a light table. And this is the part where we love volunteers to come in and help us sort through bees because our eyes start going wonky after a couple weeks. So I love to show this if you have grandkids or kids, how to get kids involved. You can scan this QR code. I have a lot of really cool tricks. I did some of them with you today, holding a baby bee and hearing the crackling of the cocoons and watching them emerge and counting the mud plugs and showing the kids what food our bees make, all of that. So it's really fun to engage our youth and teaching them about these little bees. So we're here. We're here in spring. We're here right now and ready. So you can get your garden and your yard ready for your mason bees. So again, using nesting material that can easily be opened, stacking trays, cardboard tubes. You want to make sure you have early spring blooming plants. I personally love Pieris japonica and heather. I know heather's not native, everyone tells me that, but it's full of bees. So heather and Pieris japonica are great early spring blooms. They're already blooming in my yard right now. You're gonna want to hang it on a flat surface. Do not hang it on a tree. On a wall, a fence post. You can put, I did I have a planter pot. I filled it with rocks and soil, and I got a 2x4, and I planted flowers, and then I just put it anywhere I want in my yard. Once the bees emerge, you can't move the nesting material, okay? So once you have it set up, but that's an easy way if you don't want to dig a hole in the ground or you don't want to stick it on the side of a house, but not on a tree. Ants can get up into it. It can be shaded by the sunshine, and they need that early morning sun. So sunlight, early morning. Go out with your cup of coffee in the morning. Where's the sun hitting right now? That's where I'm going to put my bee house. Early morning sun to mid-afternoon sun is where you want to hang your bee house. You want to have it about 4 to 6 feet off the ground. I had a guy ask me on Wednesday, could I hang it 20 feet up? They're not going to want to go back up there. They're going to want to keep things easy. And you're going to want to have your mud anywhere from 5 to 10 feet from that house. Wasps and birds. Okay, so what's nesting right now? Paper wasps and birds are also nesting at the same time that your mason bees are being set up. So, oh gosh, there's bees everywhere up here. So this is a trick, and I do a video on this. So that's somebody who has a bird's nest. So you're just gonna, you're gonna set, so this is a great nook for paper wasps and birds. So very simply, just go in your yard and snip whatever you want. It doesn't have, these are just, it was pouring down rain the other night, so I didn't want to go far. So I just found these. Just fill it up, fill the void, super easy. Newspaper even works if you don't want to go in your yard. Just fill that void so nothing will build a nest in there. And then I also have another video on if you have woodpeckers, you have birds with long beaks that are gonna sit there and just pluck your babies out. Super easy access for them. You wanna get chicken wire. Don't use the hardware cloth. You want the 2-inch round chicken wire. That's 2 inch, and you don't want it flat. You wanna curve it so you're not providing a perch for them. And I have a video on how to do that. Just check our YouTube. Curve it, and I just put tacks. It's lightweight stuff, right? And then 2 inches because those little bees are tubby and slow, and you don't want them clipping their wings when they're flying through the wire. All right, I know a lot of people don't like dandelions, but please, if you can keep them, there's a No Mow May campaign. Please don't spray your dandelions. If you're able to keep them, it's a huge first food for all our spring pollinators. When you start seeing your dandelions pop up, start looking for bees, because that means they're going to be emerging soon as well. All right, so we have year-round care. All of this is on our website, but we'll teach you really quick. Spring, new nesting material is put out. Summer, you're removing that nesting material. Fall, you're harvesting and cleaning. In the winter, you're storing in hibernation. If you do our rental program, we do all of that, the fall and winter for you. If you're doing your own, we have lots of videos on how to do that. All right, fruit tree pollination. Jim, come on up and join us. I have Jim coming up to talk a little bit about our fruit trees and how to help pollinate. We've got some slides to show you as well. So this is some of our setups at some of the farms. This is in the cherry blossoms that we did. And you can see our big bee totes. How many bees are we releasing in those totes?
So when we do large orchards, so like that top picture is almond orchards in California. So we'll do 1 honeybee hive and 1,000 mason bees per acre. So each of those totes will have 1,000 mason bees in it.
And yes, they work well together. They're not competing with each other. So we get asked that, well, can I have a mason bee's hive? Yeah, they all work well together. They're not going to fight with each other.
For your yard, if you got an apple tree in your yard, it takes about 3 or 4 female mason bees to pollinate that tree. 1,000 per acre is basically what we do. So of course you don't have a full acre, most of you. It doesn't take very many in your yard. If they're visiting 2,000 blooms a day, you can look at your trees and estimate how many blooms you got, and you can kind of figure out how many you need. But for one tree, 3 to 4 females would be adequate. So,
raise your hand if you think almonds are a nut. Raise your hand if you think they are a fruit. I didn't know this when I first started working with Jim. I learned this. Almonds are a fruit. Almonds, cashews, and pecans are seeds inside a drupe. I had to look that up. Drupe. Or a stone fruit. It is the pit inside the fruit. I didn't know this. I think it's pretty cool. So when I went out to the almond orchards with Jim and Nina a couple years ago, we need to go back, by the way. It was really amazing and beautiful. So they are these pink flowers that look like cherry blossoms, but there's just rows and rows wherever you drive in California of these almond orchards in full bloom. It's so beautiful. And we're out in this orchard, and Jim goes, do you want to see what a baby almond looks like? I'm like, well, yeah, I want to see what a baby almond looks like. I've never seen one before, but wait, let's grab the video camera because I want to teach everybody else what a baby almond looks like. I show this video to the kids in school too. But if you scan that QR code, I won't show you today because it's not too long, but long enough to take up time. We opened it up. It's after the blooms fall off, and then there's that little bit there, and you peel it open, and inside is a teeny tiny start of an almond. And so I did a close-up. That's what it is in his thumbs there. That's the start of an almond. So we're going to talk fruit tree pollination. Yay, we're finally here. You're all here to learn about your fruit trees and pollination and bees. So we're going to have a few slides on teaching you about that. Where to place your bees. So mason bees fly about 300 feet. So if you have a large yard, if you have a house in the middle, you have some fruit trees on one side, some fruit trees on another, spread out your bee houses. Get 2 bee houses, one for each side of your yard. And then you want to put it, I'll let you speak to this too. Where should they place their bee house how far away from their trees?
I assume we all live around Seattle. So the sunniest spot would be number 1. So we face our stuff south-southeast in terms of orientation. So don't put them where you got a tree right in front of it and it's going to be shaded all day. So you just have to look in your own yard, determine what the sunniest spot is, where you're going to have the longest amount of sun on that through the course of the day. I would say that in Seattle, it cannot get too hot for these bees, okay, in the spring, right? 90 degrees will kill a mason bee right around there. So I think we're pretty safe in around here with that temperature. So get them lots of sun. And again, they only go about 300 feet. So you kind of if your trees are, if you're on acreage and your trees are a long ways away, you're going to have 2 kits. When we do it in a large orchard, we set up one of those totes every acre because obviously they won't go, when you have 100 acres that you're pollinating, they're not going to, you got to spread them out. So just think about that in your yard, depending on circumstances. So we can't answer the question for you, but you can figure that out.
And these houses are painted black for a reason. It attracts the sunshine. Because early spring, it's still cold outside, right? So that's the other reason you want to put this in the morning sun. It's going to warm up this whole box and get your bees going. So that's the other reason. And they're nice and easy to hang with a little hook. We put them all on our blogs. So this is a fun thing I love to teach and talk about, and Jim can speak a little bit to it too, but when do you put your bees out? So I'm fielding a ton of phone calls right now from people. My blueberry bush is starting to bloom. My Asian plum is starting to bloom. Can I get my bees? I need my bees right now. It's starting to bloom. So when you're blooming super early, so we're still in March, but people are wanting their bees, you can put them out. We're going to have some sneaky weather. I personally put mine out the 1st or 2nd week of April because we get sneaky freezes around here and I don't want anything. I want to give my bees a good shot. But you can do what's called staggering the release of your bees, and this is a really cool technique. So you want to put out, we sell extra tubes if you want extra tubes, or you can take a Jello box and divide your cocoons up if you want as well. But you can put 1 tube of bees out at the end of March, a second tube of bees out, second week of April, and did I say March? April. So end of March, second week of April, end of April. So you're going to have mason bee pollination all through. Because they only live 6 to 8 weeks, so those that are putting their bees out at the end of March, they're going to be done in about 6 to 8 weeks. And then you're not going to have any more pollination. But if you have another variety of fruit trees, an apple tree or a pear tree or a cherry that's still blooming, you're going to need to put a second tube of bees out to have those emerge, right? So then you'll have mason bee pollination even longer, which is kind of fun. Everyone loves the emerging of bee process anyway, so then you just get even more bees to emerge.
How many people have Asian plums? So they're almost impossible to pollinate, okay? They bloom way too early here. That's just the way it is. You can't, it's the best case for a staggered release. You can put a few bees out with that Asian plum. Do any of you are they starting to bloom yet? Just starting, yeah. So if you put mason bees out right now and you have an Asian plum, it's not going to work. It's too cold. It's just the way it is, okay? It's the worst possible fruit tree in Seattle, in my opinion. So, sorry. But it's not native to here anyway, right? So that's part of the problem. They're not coordinated with the weather, with the bloom, with the bee. So you can do the best you can. You can put a few mason bees out now, and the only thing blooming is your Asian plum, so that's where they're going to go, right? But I wouldn't put all my bees out now because it's just too cold. And there's nothing blooming. Like in my yard, there's nothing blooming at all, right? So,
the other thing you can do, maybe you can speak to it, because I talked to people on the phone. I was talking to a guy last year about taking his bees as his Asian plum was blooming. And I said, well, take that tube out of the fridge and go sit on it and warm it up for a little while. And he's like, long pause on the phone. I'm like, I'm just kidding. You don't need to be a chicken to hatch your bees. But the theory is you can take that tube inside your home, which is nice and toasty warm, and you can warm up the bees and then put them out. Now, survival rate with them, it's so cold outside, but if you do need to get those Asian plums pollinated, it is a trick, but you really don't have to sit on them. But it is a way you can warm them up. Or just take a handful of the cocoons and warm them up so you're not compromising all your bees.
So when we do almonds in California, it's cold down there quite often, so it'll quite often be 55 degrees, but there's bloom everywhere. So we actually pre-emerge all the bees. We just bring them up to room temperature. We hatch them all in their white PVC tube, and then when bloom's ready, we take the tape off, take the bees out, and they just come right out. They'll fly at 55 because the sun is shining down there, right? So it's not always sunny. I was there this week, and it rained the whole time I was there, but in general, it's sunny. If it's 50 degrees, they'll fly at 50 degrees. The problem we have here is it's 50 degrees, but it's not sunny, right? So no insects are flying when it's raining. That's just kind of the way it is, right? So it doesn't work as well here. But we can pre-emerge them down there. We're almost done with bloom in California with the almonds. The mason bees are almost done. And it works really well. And the bees have done, I was in an orchard this week. Bees have done a great job. There were tons of full holes. It looked really good.
And the other thing that's great about mason bees, they're native, right? So they're used to the cooler, colder, damp, wet weather. So you'll see mason bees flying around in your yard pollinating, and the honeybees, you won't see any sign of them because they're not used to this cold, wet weather. So that's another nice thing about native bees, and why farmers love using mason bees, because even in the misty rain in California, you'll still have, not pouring down rain, but you'll still have mason bees pollinating. Do the male bees pollinate? They do, because they need to go get that nectar and that food, but not as ambitious as the females, because the females are collecting the pollen to take back to the nesting chambers. But the boys will get a little bit, but the pictures that you see are the girls. Yeah, they're just eating.
They're there to
boys.
mate.
Yeah. Yeah. And the males only live about 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to questions, but I love teaching the staggering. I'm having so many phone conversations right now of bees. And the nice thing that we just started it this year, where you can buy an extra tube of bees. And if you're staggering the release of your bees, this is a good way of doing it. So how many bees to release? You may have already answered this, but out in the crops, 400 mason bees do the work of 40,000 honeybees. Sink that in. 400 mason bees do the work of 40,000 honeybees. Like, it's staggering. Again, if you go back to my slide, how mason bees pollinate 95% of everything they land on, and honeybees only 5%. This is where the significance of having mason bees for your fruit trees are amazing.
One of the big things that have happened, so the almond trees, it's the largest pollination event in the world. There's 1.5 million acres of almonds in Central California. It's crazy. And 90% of the honeybees in the United States go to Central California for that event. And they put 2 honeybee hives per acre on almonds, which puts you to, they can barely survive on that. Honeybees need lots of nectar. So that's about the nectar load for honeybees almonds are. So it's really tough on the honeybees. So when they add our mason bees, they reduce the honeybees workload down to 1 honeybee hive. There's tons of nectar for them, tons of pollen, and honeybees come out healthier. So it's been a really good reciprocal relationship with honeybee keepers, farmers, and us. Everybody's happy. And so it's mason bees are a big benefit to honeybees. And we're trying to, our problem is we don't have enough bees. We're not even close, but we're working.
That's the next question, right? Then how do we help sustain that? Yeah. And that's where Jim, being the owner of our company, he's on the board. He's globally on the board of Mason Bee Europe. I mean, Sweden. He's on the phone all the time working with Mason Bee people that are all aligned with what we do. So, and research teams, like, we want to learn how to take care of our bees. I get asked a lot of time, I'm going to set up he was asking, where do we set up mud for our bees if there's not like an easily accessible, or like I had a lady yesterday, she goes, I have to build a mud hole in my garden. My dog is going to love that and roll around. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, good point. So I said, well, why don't you set up like a little fence around it or some sort of a thing where the dog's going to leave it alone, but your bees can still have access. They're not going to want it in like a plastic container. It's not natural to them. It's not instinctual to go see mud in a container.
Mud doesn't have to be a huge mystery, okay? So in your garden, you've probably put a lot of mulch and stuff like that in there, and so it doesn't pack well. But if you've got soil in your yard that when you get it wet, just take it and ball it up. If it'll ball up, it'll work for the bee, okay? If you can make a little worm out of it, it's sticky enough that they can build. If it's sandy or if it's all mulch and it falls apart, then that's not going to work. But by and large, what they like is a vertical surface. So we really recommend, just dig a hole somewhere, get that vertical surface, make sure it kind of stays wet. They'll drill into the side of it if it's not all sand. So what we do like in orchards, like I've got a grower in Fresno. It's a sandbox, his orchard. It's just super sandy. Every acre they dig a hole, they take the mud that we sell them, the same stuff, they just throw it in that hole with a little drip line on it. You'll see you just see hundreds of bees going in there, getting that clay mud out of there because there's nothing else for them. But a lot of times, most of us have somewhere in our yard that the soil has not been amended and will have enough clay. Don't get too worked up about it though, okay? But yeah, just dig a hole, throw that stuff in there, keep it wet. They'll find it. It's crazy how they find it. They also like mole holes. I got those. A lot of us have those, right? I've seen just bees going in and out of mole holes. Yeah. When
we're working with farmers and we're working with crops around the country, we always encourage them to plant a cover crop. So this is a picture I just found on Google, but it's dandelions. Like, again, dandelions are great, but clover and what else do we have them plant?
Well, we do seed mix.
Seed mix, yes.
Specifically.
You get our
For the
seed
mason
mix.
bee.
You get our seed mix as well. But why? Why do we do that? Well, when these trees are done blooming and all the petals fall off, there's no food left for the bees. So that's where the cover crops. So there still might be like a 2 or 3 week overlap where the bees are still flying, they still need food, they're still nesting, they're still trying to feed their babies, but there's no food for them in the orchards. Around here, you probably won't have that much of an issue with that because you'll have other things blooming. But you know, when we're working with farmers, they have that almond and then the blooms fall and then there's nothing left for bees. We get asked all the time about pesticides and sprays. Like, what kind can I use and can I spray? And you can address this as well, but the best timing if you have to use pesticides is when there's no bloom. So before bloom or after bloom. And then I'll let Jim answer kind of a little bit more in detail about nighttime and like all of that sort of thing if you have to.
Yeah, so if you have to spray, so these are kind of there's rules that we do with our farmers, but you know, in your backyard, I'm sure it's going to be different. But try not to spray during bloom because bees in general are attracted to your trees during that time of the year, right? So once bloom's done, they're not going to be visiting your tree in the same manner. So if you can avoid it, that's great. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's something you have to spray. So if there's something you have to spray during bloom, we recommend doing it at night, and then try to do it in such a way, you know, if it's cold, there's a chance the next morning you would have dew. Well, that whatever you sprayed doesn't dry, and then it's in that dew in the morning, and you can really get your bees bad when that happens. Okay, so try to spray right as the sun's going down in the evening. Make sure it dries overnight. Chances are your bees will be okay. So that's the if you have to spray. The other thing is don't mix sprays together. Okay? So if you have to spray, say, a fungicide on your trees because it's rained and you're worried about all that, don't add, you know, they sell with them. They sell things like stickers that cause it to stick better or spreaders that cause it to spread better. Do not mix those together and spray that. We're finding that causes huge problems. So when you mix chemicals together, that's never been tested on bees. And it changes the makeup of that spray. And so it doesn't work. I'll just tell you, it can be really toxic to bees. So we've had some really good success in orchards where the guys will spray even at night. In fact, most fruit guys now, most farmers spray at night. That's just the way it's done.
Because they're not flying.
Because the bees aren't flying.
Yeah.
Right? So
and it can dry overnight, so it won't impact them the next day.
So we won't work with a farmer who sprays during the day. We're just not participating with them.
And that's a huge thing because all these farmers want to use our bees, but we're really selective because we don't want them killing the bees that they're using. So it's a big deal, right?
Well, it's dumb.
Right.
Because I mean, it's a complete waste of money.
Yeah.
Go kill all your bees that you just spent all this money on. Well, it just doesn't work. So. And
we're part of OBA, Orchard Bee Association. If you're getting bees from other people, make sure they're OBA certified because there's certain rules and ways. I see a lot of bee sales right now because it's bee season for people to buy mason bee tubes full of bees that haven't been cleaned. And you want to avoid those because obviously there's predators and pests inside. But when you're part of the Orchard Bee Association, we have to follow all these rules and guidelines to ship and send the right species and to take care of them and to hibernate, all of the stuff that we have to follow. But part of the OBA Association is we work with these research teams all across the country. Once a year, we get together for an OBA meeting. Now, anybody can join it if you have fruit trees or if you want to be a part of it. It's really, really fun. We went to Utah for the USDA Bee Lab a couple years ago. Last year, it was hosted here. I think next year, this year, it's going to be hosted. They're figuring out. Nina's a part of it. But why I bring this up is when we go to these OBA meetings, the researchers present the research that they've been doing on mason bees. And so we've learned some really cool things. And one of the things that they taught us, it was a couple years ago, is they were researching and studying the smells in the bees' habitat does that impact them coming back to their nesting blocks or into their pollination? And the research they were doing, they found that the tractors that the farmers are using in that exhaust that's coming out, they were super highly sensitive to it and they flew off. They didn't like it. So if they're sensitive to those smells of the exhaust, imagine what a spray or something in your yard. I mean, don't wear too much perfume when you're out looking at your bees. But my point is, they are very highly sensitive to all of these things. Yeah. So I don't know if this is accurate. Emily, do you want to speak to anything that you guys use? I was putting the slide deck together last night, and I found this organic stuff. I put the website source up there. It seemed like it was pretty cool, but again, if you're going to use any organic stuff, you're going to want to do it at night or do it when there's no bloom. But it seemed like an interesting find. So I wanted to share it with you. Emily, do you have anything you want to add to pesticides or pollinating or any of that?
City Fruit, we don't use pesticides when we're doing any of our tree care. We tend to use an integrated pest management approach, and that looks like using physical barriers to prevent pests from infesting the fruit. And so, you know, typically in, like, if you have an apple tree, for example, in May, after the fruit has already pollinated, already start to set, but before the pests have had time to really get too situated, we'll put nets over trees, or you can also bag individual fruits to just provide a physical barrier for the pests to not get in and infest.
That was one of the things I was really impressed when we were considering partnering with City Fruit. It's like, okay, teach me your ways. Like, what is it? Because we want to align our ways with your ways. And I love how they don't use pesticides. I love how they partner with fruit tree owners. You can ask questions. They have people that come to your home. They will net. They will take care of it. They will prune, all of that. And so, guys, they're a really good program to join. It's not expensive, but you're going to get a lot of support from a fruit tree pollination standpoint, and there's just a great organization to be a part of. We're wrapping things up. So I put this on my newsletters. Hear the buzz, be the buzz, join the buzz. So please join, follow us on YouTube. If you're getting our videos, these are QR codes that go right to it, and then you can subscribe. I'm constantly teaching. We're always doing new videos. We're putting content out because I love to teach bees. And so this video today we'll put together. We'll put it up on YouTube. And then please subscribe to our newsletters. If you're not getting them already, it's how we communicate to the masses. We have thousands of people that do our program, and I can't reach every single one of them. So this is my easy way. If you see a newsletter, they come in from info@rentmasonbees.com. Make sure that it's not going into your spam box, because I try to not spam you. I don't want to like give you a bunch of crap all the time. If you're seeing a newsletter, it's important. So open it up and take a look at it. And then Facebook and Instagram. I'm really good at Facebook. I'll post lots of stuff. I'm not so good on Instagram. Nina is good at Instagram. I'm not the best, but I'm being taught and I'm getting better. I do this talk to help teach, but there's just a handful of us that can teach people the proper care and maintenance of mason bees. I'd love your help to help teach more people. I will provide this PowerPoint presentation to you. You can share my videos. You can do whatever you need to help spread the word on proper care and maintenance, please, because there are so many people. Millions of these bee hotels are super cute, but there's no instructions on how to care for bees. So please, goosebumps, help me help you. No, but help spread the word on how to care for these amazing little pollinators. So I think that's it. There you go. Any questions? All right, everyone, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching the entire length of this video. I know it's very long, but hopefully you learned how to pollinate your fruit trees. You learned about mason bees. You learned about cityfruit.org in order to help pollinate those trees. And we just love teaching bees. So please follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our newsletter, and visit us online at rentmasonbees.com. Happy pollinating. Bye.